Okay, let's get started. So this is a fairly involved section. It starts off pretty easy, but it does get a little bit more challenging as we move through it. So we work through order of operations on this section, and what I'm going to do is walk you through the process as they come up. Okay, we've seen this before that I put up on the right side of the board. We've seen that before, but what you may not have seen is the real proper way of doing it. So we'll just make sure that we understand that. Let's start off with the first problem. 16 divided by 8 times a negative 4. Now, when you do the order of operations, you're always going to check first and foremost if you have things to do in the parentheses. So, is there anything that you need to do within a set of parentheses? Now, as you can see here, we do have a set of parentheses. The negative 4 is in them. Is there anything that we need to do within there? No, you can't do anything with negative 4. Negative 4 is just there. So when they refer to parentheses as the very first thing you need to do, they're saying look within, look for parentheses and actual things to do within them. That might look like negative 4 plus 3, negative 4 times 5, whatever it happens to be, but in this case, there's nothing actually within the parentheses to do. So, nothing to do there. Next thing is, once you've addressed anything, if anything, with parentheses, then you're going to look for exponents. So, are there any things with exponents on them? Any powers in the problem? Well, in mine, there are none. So, I can't really do anything there, which is fine. From there, we move on to multiplication and division. So, we now look for multiplication and division. Now, with multiplication and division, there's one very, very, very important rule, and that is to work left to right. This is a very fundamental rule that you must follow. Let's understand what that means. So, in the event that you see multiplication and division, you're not always going to do the multiplication first necessarily. You may not do the division first necessarily. You will always look to work left to right if they are sitting side by side. This is where you'll want to pay close attention. As you can clearly see here, the 8 times the negative 4, there's the multiplication, and this is division. So we have multiplication and division, division and multiplication sitting side by side. If they are sitting side by side, then you're going to work left to right. Many people would make the mistake here of doing the multiplication first, but that's not correct. When they're sitting side by side, or I don't even want to put a multiplication sign there, I'm just going to say side by side. When you see that side by side, then you go left to right. So in this case, we are not going to multiply first. What we're going to do first, because division is next to multiplication, multiplication is right next door to division, we're going to work left to right. That was a lot of different ways of saying the same thing, but that actually comes first. 16 divided by 8 is 2. Then we can then do the multiplication. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. So that is the correct way to do this problem. Make sure that you are understanding the beginnings of, in the event that you have things side by side, multiplication, division, division, multiplication. If they're side by side like this, work left to right. Okay? Hopefully you got that first problem correct. Let's go on to the next one. All right, 9 minus 9 squared. So here's our next one. So in our next problem, let's start all the way back at the beginning. Do we have any items within parentheses to work on? No, we do not. Do we have any exponents? Yes, we do. We do have exponents to work on, and so therefore, since we have exponents to work on, we need to do those next. Now, as you can see here, we have 9 squared, not negative 9 squared. I want to make a quick little note here off to the side. This is not negative 9 squared. Negative 9 squared would be a negative 9 times another negative 9, which would be positive 81. Why? What's the difference between these two? This is not in parentheses, is it? So therefore, since that is not in parentheses, like you see here, you don't treat it the same way. This is simply 9 squared, which is just 81, and then bring everything down. Okay? Now, if you had seen a negative 9 in parentheses squared, it would have become positive 81. Okay? Be very, very careful with that. It's a tricky problem. I put that note there. Hopefully something else comes up where we get more practice with that. Then from there, do we have any multiplication and division? Nope. Do we have any addition, subtraction? Yes, we do. 9 minus 81. We learned from our rules that the sign of your answer is the sign of the bigger number, and then you just subtract the two, negative 72. All right, there you go. Okay. Any questions about that at all? You doing okay? Getting the right answers? All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, here we go. Next problem. 1 minus negative 5 plus 6 squared. Okay, let's take a look at this. Let's go through our process. Are there items within parentheses that can be worked on, within them? So we have a parentheses here. Is there any actual math or calculation to do inside of there? No, there's not. Since there's nothing, then I now move forward to exponents. Are there any exponents to work on? Yes, there are. This one right here. 6 squared. 6 squared is 36. Bring down the plus sign and bring everything else down as well. So what I've now done is I've addressed my parentheses, nothing really to do. I've addressed my exponent, and now I can move on to any kind of multiplication and division that I see. Is there any multiplication and division? Nothing here, nothing here. These are addition, subtraction. So the multiplication division step does not exist in this problem. Let's take a look at the next step, addition and subtraction. Now, when you're dealing with addition and subtraction, it works very much in the same way as multiplication and division. If you see them next door to each other, here's one, here's another. If you see them next door to each other, you should work them left to right. If you see them side by side, you should work them left to right. I have a subtraction problem here and an addition problem here. It doesn't mean the addition problem comes first. It doesn't necessarily mean the subtraction problem comes first. If they are side by side, you work left to right. So that is why this one should be done first. Everybody got that? Okay? It works very similarly to our division problem. So, with that said, we're going to work this one. What's a negative right next to a negative? It becomes a positive. You guys learned. And so 1 plus 5 is 6. That is done first. Then everything else comes down with it. Everybody got that? Okay? So it's really important that you pay attention to those details, follow the procedure, and the more you practice with it, the easier it's going to get. Now, final step, not so bad, 6 plus 36, addition, that's going to be a 42. And we're done. Any questions about that at all? Hopefully you're getting yours correct. Anybody want me to do their problem? Okay, let me know. I'm happy to do yours. Okay, rolling on to the next one. Let's take a look at this next problem. So I've got 4 plus 8 times 9 minus 2. All right, let's look at this one. Okay, let's start fresh, right at the very beginning. First step, do we have any parentheses? Yes, we do. Right here. Is there anything in the parentheses that can actually be worked on? Yes, this time there is. No, no. Neither of these problems actually had work to do in the parentheses. But this one does indeed have something that we can address within the parentheses, something we can calculate. And since there is something that we can actually calculate, we need to do that before anything else. So 9 minus 2 is 7. Now, when you do that calculation in the parentheses, generally what I would do is just leave it in there. I'm sure there's going to be some instances that show up where we take it out of the parentheses, but in general, you're going to see me in most cases leave it in there. The reason why I leave it in there is because when you leave it in there, it tells you or reminds you that what is going on between the 8 and the 7, they're being multiplied. If you take it out of the parentheses, now there's some confusion. Make sense? Unless you remember to put a dot there. Got it? Okay? And that is why typically I will leave it in the parentheses as a reminder to myself that there's multiplication there. Okay? Now, parentheses stuff is done. Let's move forward to look for exponents. Are there any exponents that look like this, that look like this? No, there are not. Let's move on. Now, let's move to multiplication division. Is there any? Yes, there is. 8 times 7. A positive 8 times a positive 7 is a positive 56. I want to remind you, always put down the sign. Always write down the sign. Write the sign. Positive 8 times positive 7, positive 56. And bring down anything else that was not worked on. And finally, we finished all the multiplication, all the division. That brings us to addition, subtraction. This one's not so bad. 60 is our answer. Make sense? Any questions about that at all? Okay. Anybody have a problem that they'd like me to do? Anything that I can help you with? Okay. Can I move on? Let me know if I need to slow down. I'm happy to slow down. All right. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay. Let's do this one. Okay, so we have a negative 6 plus 7 times 5 minus 13. All right. So let's take a look at this one. First, are there parentheses? Yes. Furthermore, are there parentheses with things to work on? Yes. So that comes first. Okay, 5 minus 13, that's going to be not 8, negative 8. And as I said earlier, it is very important that generally, after you've done the work in the parentheses, leave it in there. There again may be something that comes up where I take it out. I'll tell you why if it happens to come up that way. But generally, leave it in parentheses. Why? As a reminder that it's multiplication. Now, all the parentheses work is done. Move on to exponents. There are none. Move on to multiplication division. There is some right here. So what do I have? Positive 7 times negative 8. A positive times a negative is a negative 56. And then bring down anything else that was not worked on. You got to know your times tables. You got to know your signs. You got to know how they work together in order to be successful. Finally, I have subtraction here. -6 minus another, or minus 56. -6 minus 56. That's not going to be positive. It's not going to be positive because it's not multiplication, is it? It's going to stay negative because we're in subtraction. -6, -6, minus 56 more. You owe $6, you spend 56 more, you're going to owe or have spent $62. Everybody got that? It's not multiplication. Be careful with that. This is not multiplication, so this is not going to be positive. And if it were multiplication, it wouldn't be 62. Your answer would be like 336. So be careful with that, okay? So there it is. Any questions about that? Anybody want me to do their problem? I'm happy to. You just let me know. Questions? Happy to work your problem. Just gotta tell me. All right. Can I move on? Okay. All right. Let's take a look at this next one. So 3 -7 plus 9 minus 7 minus 16. All right. So on this next problem, we still proceed like we have been before. So we still want to go through the same thought process, procedure, order of operations that we've been. Ask yourself, are there items within the parentheses that can be calculated? And the answer is yes. But for the first time, we actually have 2 sets of parentheses that can be worked concurrently at the same time. So I'm going to go do them. -7 plus 9 is going to be a positive 2. 7 minus 16 is going to be a negative 9. I'm going to bring down anything that wasn't worked on. Notice how, once again, it's very important, and I've done it, I've left everything still in the parentheses after I've done the work. So I have not taken anything out. I don't make the mistake of missing signs, leaving anything to chance. I leave it in parentheses. Are there any questions about that very first step? If you are pretty masterful with your addition, subtraction with negatives, this isn't going to be too bad. But if you haven't quite mastered it yet, it's going to be a little tricky. You probably just practice a little bit more. Okay? All right, let's take a look at this next step. Do we have any exponents? No. Any multiplication or division? Yes, we do. This is multiplication. That's multiplication. So that's what we're going to do next. 3 times 2, positive 3 times positive 2 is a positive 6. Then bring down anything else that wasn't worked on. Is there any addition or subtraction? Yes, there is. Right here in our final step. And we know from earlier, let's see where that problem was, right here, and from a previous class, that when we see a negative sign and another negative sign, it becomes positive. So that's what's going to happen here. 6 plus 9, and then the answer is 15. Okay. Questions about that at all? Anything I can do to help you? Anything not making any sense? want me to do your problem. Okay.
Can you do mine?
Sure. What's yours?
4 parentheses negative 3 plus 4 parentheses minus parentheses 4 minus 15
Okay.
parentheses.
Great. All right. Tell me what your first step was.
Adding the negative 3 and 4.
Great. Perfect. And what do you get from that?
1.
Great. Love it. What was the other thing to do at the same time?
And then adding the 4 and negative
Great. What do you get there?
negative
Wonderful. What did we bring down?
the 4 and the subtraction.
You got it. Very good. That's a great first step. Look at the consistency between the two problems, right? Just different numbers. Great. What did you do next?
Multiply 4 times 1.
You got it. Which is? Positive or negative?
Positive.
Good. Then what did I bring down?
Subtraction.
Mm-hmm. And everything else, right? Good. Now, what's next?
Adding the 4 and negative 11.
Okay, and so what does this line look like? Why don't you read it to me left to right, exactly what it's supposed to look like?
4 minus negative 11.
Which becomes what?
Positive.
There you go. And the answer is?
15.
Good. Do you know where you made your mistake? Because it sounded pretty good all the way through that. Where was your mistake?
On the 4 minus negative 11.
So you didn't turn it positive or something? Okay. Great. There you go. Any other questions? All right, wonderful. So it is important, and it is an easy mistake to make. So just pay attention when that happens. Have that in your toolkit. Good. Let's move on to the next one, shall we? All right, so here we go. Next problem. Okay, let's go through the process. First, are there items within the parentheses that need to be worked on? Yes. 4 minus 18. What's 4 minus 18? Negative 14. Be very careful. Check your work. Remember the things that we talked about before. Now, bring everything else down that didn't get worked on. Now from here, is there any exponent work that we need to do? No, there is not. Is there any multiplication and division work? Yes, there is. In fact, here is multiplication, here is division. Which one do we do when they're side by side? Left to right. So in the event that they're side by side, as we discussed earlier, if they are side by side, work whatever comes first. If the division was first, we would do the division. It just so happens that the multiplication is first when reading it left to right, so that's what we're going to do. So a negative 3 times a negative 14, I believe is going to be a positive 42, okay? Double check your work. A negative times a negative is a positive. 3 times 14 is 42. Then I'm going to write down everything else that I didn't work on and get ready for the next step. Again, multiplication skills, sign skills, all that stuff makes a difference. And finally, we got some division. I have a positive divided by a negative. When I have a positive divided by a negative, it tells me I'm going to be a negative. That's the rule. And 42 divided by 21 is 2. And I'm done. Okay. Any questions about that problem? Anybody want me to do theirs? Anything not making sense? Please ask. Anything? You guys doing okay? Getting the right answers? And yours? Can I move on? Okay, let's keep on rolling. All right. This looks simple. It is simple, but I'll just go ahead and do it. Let's take a look here. So I've got a negative 3 times a negative 7 plus 2 times 8. It is as straightforward as it seems, but sometimes these problems, for whatever reason, will throw a student. Are there parentheses? Yes. Are there things to work on in the parentheses? No. Moving forward. Are there exponents? No. Moving forward. Is there multiplication or division? Yes, there's multiplication. In fact, there are not one, but 2 multiplication problems to deal with at the same time. So make sure you pay attention to the signs when you multiply. Negative 3 times negative 7 is going to be a positive 21. Positive 2 times positive 8 is 16, and you need to make sure you write the sign down. In a case like this, make sure you actually write the sign down. Don't just put 2116. Write the sign down. Write down the sign. Otherwise, you might make a mistake. Anyways, it's pretty straightforward from there. Do the addition. 37. You're done. Okay, write it down. 2 times 18 is not just 16, it's positive 16. That positive sign links the 2 and helps you better answer the question. 21 plus 16. Okay, hopefully you guys got the right answer there. That one is pretty straightforward as long as you don't make any mistakes with your signs. Questions at all? Doing okay? All right, next. All right. Now things get just a little bit more complex. Here we go. Okay. All right. First and foremost, always make sure you write the problem down correctly. So often, especially when they start to get a little bit large, we start to see mistakes in just simply the setup. So make sure that your setup is correct all the way through. Double, triple check your setup. Pay attention that you didn't write down my numbers instead of yours. If you're writing down mine, maybe this goes on the left side of your page and your problem goes on the right side of the page. Okay? Then you can compare the two and go, okay, this is Andrew's work, this is my work. Just like this. See this? So it could be the left side of your page, the right side of your page, and you can go line by line and compare our two problems. Okay, so let's take a look here. Step 1, are there items within parentheses that need to be worked on? Yes, there are. We've got actually 1, 2 parentheses where the items within them can be worked. My first one happens to have an exponent in it. So I'm going to go work that exponent because I must prioritize the items within the parentheses and whatever I'm being asked to do with them. So 3 squared is 9. Remember, like I said, whatever you do within there, why don't you just leave it in the parentheses? Let's go look at the other one, 3 plus 9. That's 12. Like I said, whatever the outcome of what is in the parentheses, leave it in there. Okay? Now, is there or are there any other items inside parentheses to be calculated? No, there are not. So I'm just going to write down, bring down everything that I did nothing with. That still needs to be brought through to the next step. Any questions about that very first step? Are we okay? We got it? Ask me, ask me. All right. So we did everything in the parentheses. Are there any exponents outside of the parentheses? Nope. So now we can move forward to multiplication and division. Is there any multiplication or division or multiplication division side by side? Well, it looks like we just got individual multiplication problems. And so I'm going to go do those calculations. 3 times 9, positive 3 times positive 9 is a positive 27. Now this one, you might need to do a little side work here. Positive 9 times positive 12, I believe that's going to be 108. And you need to make sure, what do? Write the sign down. Don't just leave it like this. That's empty. Something's missing here. You're missing the link. Include the sign. Link them up. And then bring everything else down. Any questions about that step? Anything I can help you with on yours? All right, let me know. Okay, I have done all of the multiplication. There was no division. I can move forward to addition and subtraction. Is there addition subtraction? Yes. Here and here. Which comes first? Left to right. Since they're side by side, I work left to right. 27 plus 108 is going to be what? 135, and bring down the rest. The less that you try to do too much at once, the more that you take your time writing your steps down, being organized, the less likely you're going to make a mistake and have to redo the problem and backtrack. So I did that. Now, one more to go, and that is this one right here. Pretty straightforward. And here it comes again. 2 negatives side by side. 2 negatives side by side. 2 negatives side by side become a positive. So that's going to be 135 plus 4. And the answer, 139. It's not really a hard problem per se, it's just lots of steps. But it's nothing that we haven't done before. It's nothing that doesn't have a procedure. Everything has an order, a procedure to it. The tricky thing is some of the arithmetic that comes up. Maybe could make mistakes there. If you rush too much, you try to skip steps, chances to make mistakes occur as well there. Any questions? Please let me know if you'd like me to do your problem. I'll be happy to line it up side by side with this one and solve it for you. Anybody want me to do theirs? Okay. Here's just a quick suggestion as you guys are finishing off your problem. Just using this example of a left-right scenario. You watch me do mine, and then you just mirror it as we go along. Left, right, left, right, left, right. And pretty much you just copy and paste my methodology into yours. Pretty soon you'll feel very confident and comfortable, okay? So So that's just a way to do it instead of going, oh, go do all of Andrew's problem, watch and copy, then do all of mine. Sometimes it can be easier to go, okay, this is what Andrew did, I'm going to do the same thing on mine and just work through it with me. Okay, all right, we good to move on? Okay, next. All right, this one looks a little bit complex. Let's see what we can do here. Okay, so here we are. Okay, lots of exponents, lots of parentheses. Looks a little confusing. Let's break it down step by step. First thing, parentheses. I'm going to ask the question like I asked in all of the previous problems. Are there any calculations inside of parentheses that need to be made? Yes, just this one. So ignore everything else. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about those things and simply focus on what your task needs to be, which is calculating the items that are within parentheses. 2 minus 6, negative 4. Now, easy to make a mistake there if you don't know your signs. 2 minus 6 is negative 4. Okay? Now from here, bring everything else down. And now, after that first step, I've calculated everything within the parentheses. There's no other problems to do, no other calculations to make within parentheses. I can move forward to the exponents. Let's take a look at them. I have several. This one, and this one. There are 3 exponents to calculate. It's important that you know how to handle all of them. Let's look. Negative 4 squared. Well, I just happened to erase the one that actually was related to it. So how about I have you recall what it looked like? Negative 4 squared is the same as what? Negative 4 times another negative 4. Everybody agree? And a negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 4 is 16. And so this one becomes a 16. These happen to be identical, so we got another 16. Everybody with me? Okay. Now, 2 cubed. Why don't I just do that off to the side? 2 to the 3rd power is 2 times another 2 times another 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So that is going to be 8. Remember to bring down the division sign. Take your time. Go do yours. Okay? Take your time. Make sure you can do yours. A lot of exponent work there can be very, very tricky. I'm happy to do your problem if you want to raise your hand and ask about it. Okay, all right, let's go to the next step. We've finished all of the exponents. Now we can move on to multiplication and division. What comes first when they're side by side? This is multiplication. This is clearly division. What happens when they're side by side? You work left to right. So there's the first thing to get done. The division doesn't matter. You need to do the multiplication first. Now 16 times 16, I'm going to need to go do that off to the side. 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 3 is 9. I know this is going to be a 6 and a 1, so that's going to be 6, 15, 256. So that's how I get 256, 256. Everybody with me so far? Now, This is obviously an area, arithmetic, easy to make a mistake. Super easy to make a mistake. So do your best to get the right answer. Bring down everything else. Okay, I did the multiplication. Now I can move on to the final step of dividing these two. 256 divided by 8. That's not an easy problem to do either. So I'll do it off to the side. 8 does not go into 2, but 8 does go into 25 3 times. 24. Subtract it. 1. Bring down the 6. Does 8 go into 16? 2 times. Subtract it. All done. And that is how I get an answer of 32. It's hard. This one is hard because there's order of operations, there's exponents, and there's some pretty, longer calculations to do. Okay. Any questions about that at all? Now, anybody want me to do theirs? This is one where I could easily see somebody making a mistake, having some trouble getting their way out of the woods. Anybody want me to do their problem? I'm happy to. You just let me know. I won't know unless you're telling me. All right, take another minute to finish whatever you're on. If you get stuck, let me know. Happy to help you. Anybody? Did you get yours right? Yes? Yeah? Hope so. If not, let me know. We good? All right, let's keep on rolling. I really do encourage you guys to talk with me if you're struggling in any way. Okay, so let's go to this next one. All right, well, this is an interesting one. Not because it's really hard, but just because there's a lot to it. So -1 plus 5 squared minus a -12 all over. -3 minus 12 plus 12. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is provide a suggestion of a couple ways that you can do this problem, okay? So I'm going to show you a couple ways that you can do this. It's really completely up to you how you want to do it moving forward. Doesn't bother me. Take this part out. Okay, so the first way is to separate the numerator from the denominator. Treat them like completely separate problems. Then when those individual problems are done, we bring them back together. I'm going to show you how to do it that way. So my first problem is -1 plus 5 squared minus a -12. Just focus on the numerator. That's all you got to do. Focus on the numerator. You guys with me so far? Treat it like it's its own little side problem. Is this really that hard to do compared to some of the stuff we did earlier? No. Let's go through the order of operations. So, what comes first? Stuff in parentheses. Anything to do there? No. So what comes next? Exponents. Anything to do there? Yes. This right here. 5 squared is 25. Bring everything down that you didn't do anything with. Now I'm going to move a little bit quicker through this because I think that some of this work you're starting to get used to doing. Now, I've got addition next to subtraction. What happens first? The addition. -1 plus 25 is a positive 24. Bring everything down that you haven't worked on. Next, what comes next? This. Have we done it before? Sure we have. 24 plus 12, which is 36. Is that the answer to the problem? No. The only thing that is the answer to the numerator. You guys follow me? Okay? Do we still have a little more work to do? Sure we do, right? We still have to do the denominator. So the denominator for me is negative 3 minus 12 plus 12. I'm going to pause there real quick because I think that some of you are maybe working your problem. Finish up your numerator and bring it back into the problem. Okay? Finish your numerator and bring it back into the problem. Notice how I did not put a box around this because that's not the answer. I circled it to let you know it's an important part of the problem. In fact, it's the answer to the numerator. Anybody have any questions about their numerator? Can I move forward? All right, here comes my denominator. What comes first? Addition or subtraction? In this case, subtraction comes first because it's left to right. They're side by side, side by side. What comes first? Left to right when they're side by side. Negative 3 minus 12 more is negative 15. It's not a positive 15 because is this multiplication? No, it's not. This is not negative 3 times negative 12. It's negative 3 minus 12. I spent $3. I spent 12 more. I spent 15. Bring down whatever you didn't work on and finish out the problem. Negative 15 plus 12 is a negative 3. That's not the answer to the problem. It's just the answer to the denominator. So there's the numerator, and then there's the denominator. Got it? And one last step. Put them together. A positive divided by a negative is going to be a negative. 36 divided by 3. You could do it off to the side if you need to. 36 divided by 3. 3 goes into 3 once. It's going to be 12. Bring down the 6. And so there it is. If you need to do the side work, but that's my answer. Make sense? It's a lot of problem there. It's not really hard, it's just multi-part. Lots of parts that you got to do and then individually, do them individually and then bring them together at the very end. Okay? Now, I said that I would show you how to do them all in one. The only difference when you would want to do them all in one is that you would work the problem and do all of this in the problem. So you would be doing all these steps in line in the problem, as opposed to breaking them off to the side and bringing them back in. It's really your choice how to do them. This is a little bit more easy for students to understand, to break it out, than to try to do it all together, line by line by line. Okay, so there it is. Anybody want me to do their problem? A lot going on. Please let me know. I'm happy to do yours. Lots of places where you can make mistakes, arithmetic errors, lots of spots. You okay? Can I move forward? Let me know if you need to slow down. All right, next. Oh boy. All right, well, let's go attack this one. All right. So, step one, first and foremost, make sure you write the problem down correctly. This is a really easy place to make a mistake. So, writing the problem down correctly out of the gates is your first step to doing a good job here. You make a mistake there, then you might do a lot of work for nothing. So, write down the problem, then double check what you wrote down. checked my work. I think it's correct in terms of writing the problem down correctly. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go do 2 problems off to the side. I'm going to do my side work on these problems. I'm going to do the numerator kind of right down here, all right? So I've got -5 plus 28. There's my numerator. I'm going to go work that first. Then I'll put it back into the problem. Then I'll go do the denominator, put that one back in the problem, then see what happens when I put them together. Is this something that we can do? Sure it is. We've done a lot of things like it. Let's go to it. Parentheses, no, nothing to do in there. Exponents, no. Multiplication and division, yes. Here, no. Here, division. Here, multiplication. Which comes first when they're side by side? Left to right. Not this. This. Very easy to make this mistake here. That is what comes first. I have division side by side with multiplication. They're attached, they're connected, so the division comes first. Positive 28 divided by -4 is -7. Be very, very careful. Then I'm going to bring everything else down. Now, what were these two? They're multiplied. This is super huge here. Pay close attention. Easy on this step to forget that these were multiplied originally. Whatever happens here gets multiplied by this. So you've got to pay very close attention to this. I'm going to make a note here and put a star here because it will mess up students left and right. Be very, very, very careful that you remember that this was division next to multiplication, which means that after you got this, you then need to multiply that, and I just told you what happens next, right? That's those two. -7 times another -7 is positive 49. So I'm going to add 49, positive 49, however you want to write it, positive 49. Bring everything down that didn't get worked on. Take a look at that. Very, very important that you pay close attention. So easy to make a mistake. This is actually very hard because there's so many little things that can throw you off here. Make sure you're watching your problem, connecting them, left, right, mine and yours. Make no mistake on your signs. And then finally, we're going to add these two together. -5 plus 49 is going to be a positive 44. That's not the answer. It's only what the numerator becomes. Are there any questions about your numerator? Please ask. Lots of stuff going on here. All right, let's go do the denominator, shall we? Okay, ready? Good? Okay. So I just wrote down my denominator. Be very careful. Make sure that there's no issues with yours. Don't write down my numbers. Only write down yours, unless you're writing and running my problem. Okay. Parentheses, no, no. Nothing to do there. Exponents, nothing. Multiplication, division, yes. Here's multiplication. Here's division. And here's another multiplication. So I've got multiplication, then a division, then another multiplication. Well, what do I do first? Well, they're all attached. Attached, attached, attached. When they're all attached and they're side by side, we work left to right. Notice how that principle continues to be a factor in the problems that we do over and over again. So this is what comes first. Okay, that is what comes first. You got to be very careful about it. All right, let's go do it. Negative 3 times positive 24 is going to give me a negative whatever it is. And I'm going to go kind of do that. It's going to be 72. I'm not going to write it off to the side. I'm just going to do it in my head. You guys could eventually do yours. Bring down everything else that hasn't been worked on. Now, what is the tempting thing to do here? Subtract these. Is that what comes next? No, it does not. Again, what is the tempting thing to do? Subtract. That is not what comes next. What comes next is what you need to do here, which is the division. You cannot subtract those. It does not precede the division that should be happening here. Continuing on with that left to right process. You got to finish that left to right process. Negative 72 divided by 4. I believe that's going to be a negative 18. Yes, negative 18. And you guys could have done it if you take your time to. I just did in my head to save myself writing down all these little circles. But if I gave you enough time, you could figure out negative 72 divided by a positive 4. Okay? Bring down everything that you didn't work on. Now again, it's tempting to subtract these. But what happens next? You need to remember that this is multiplication here. Remember that. Left to right. Look at what we needed to do. This to this to this. So this actually comes next. Tricky. Very tricky. The bottom is actually hard, just as hard as the top, if not worse. I've got a negative 18 times a positive 4. That's going to end up being a negative 72. Well, it just so worked out that it ended up going to be 0. But that's just a coincidence here. You wouldn't always do that. So had you actually subtracted these and divided, you would have lucked out because it does end up being 0. But that is not what you normally should do. Okay? So here is a 0. So be really careful. It wouldn't always end up this way. All it takes is for this to be a 2, and it would not end up that way. But you would still have to go that same route. Okay? It just so happens that the numbers they picked turned into a 0 as well. This is a coincidence. Don't assume that, oh, that's a shortcut. I could have actually gone 0. No, if this was a 2, it wouldn't have ended up that way. Okay. What's the answer? You got it. Good job. Nicely done. We remember that anything divided by 0 is undefined. 0 divided by anything, that's 0. Okay? So this is undefined as an answer. And that would be B in my selection choice. All right? Lots of stuff going on. A lot. You guys are doing great. Is there anybody that wants me to do theirs? This one's a tough one. If you want me to, I'm happy to do that. I hope you guys got the right answer. Some of you may have just said, you know what, I'm just going to take a chance and see if mine's undefined as well. I wouldn't blame you. All right, let's go on to the next one. Okay, so we see some fractions, and so I am not going to force you guys to do the really hard fractions in this section. We're going to just do kind of the lighter ones, and then close it down for the day and close it down for the section, okay? So I will not require you to do the crazy, crazy hard fractions. It's not, it's gonna end up losing almost all of you, and it's not worth spending that much time to lose everybody. But we do need to do the simple ones like this. Let's take a look. 1/6 minus 4/9 times 6. Okay? All right. Everybody ready? Okay, here we go. None of this goes out the window. All of this still applies. But what you have on top of it is you have your rules for adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing your fractions. Recall all those rules that we did over the last couple classes, right? So I am not going to rewrite them. I'm not going to write them down. I'm just going to reference them as we do our work, okay? If you do need to reference them, go back and watch over those videos, look at your notes. Let's take a look here. What happens first? That's subtraction. That's multiplication. So the multiplication should come first. Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. Even with fractions, those rules still apply. So I need to do -4/9 times 6. Now the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to just work it off to the side here. So I have a -4/9 times 6/1. Remember, we learned how to do that. Okay? Now, what happens next? I can cancel. I can divide both of those by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. 9 divided by 3 is 3. I'm going to rewrite the problem, -4/3 times 2/1. Now, I moved through that really, really fast. Recall that we have done this before. We just did it. If you did your homework, you did your quizzes, you paid attention last class, we did all this, okay? If you need to see it again, go watch the videos. It'll walk you through it. Then multiply. -4 times 2 is a -8/3. And that is what this becomes. Bring down what you didn't work on. Is this harder? I think so. It is harder. There's a lot more stuff to it. And generally, of course, we know that most students don't do well with fractions, and I don't blame you. We've done the multiplication. What do we have next? Addition, subtraction. And we know with addition, subtraction, we've got to get a common denominator. Common denominator for this is 6. So I'm going to multiply this one by 2, and what I do to the bottom to get that 6, I got to do to the top, 16. So I've gone back into my problem and just working my problem itself. Okay? Now, what's next? Bring them together. When you're adding and subtracting, remember that you leave the common denominator alone and you add and subtract the numerator. 1 minus 16. 1 minus 16 over the common denominator. What's 1 minus 16? We've done so many addition subtractions with negatives. That's going to be -15/6. Am I done yet? No, I have to simplify. What can I simplify these by? I can divide them. Let me create some space here. I can divide both of them by 3. And so that's going to be -5/2. This is hard. In fact, frankly, in my opinion, this is way worse to me than a lot of these over here. Go see if you can get yours right. Let's take the time and go see if you guys can get yours right. I'm going to kind of scan forward in some of the problems to see what we really need to do, and I may cut things off at a certain point. split this into 2. We were at 13, is that where we were at? Yeah. I may continue this lecture on Tuesday. We got 10 minutes, that's good. Is there anybody that wants me to do theirs? Okay, I'm gonna do one more problem and then we'll call it a day, okay? And then we'll finish off this section on Tuesday. And I'll just have a part 2 to this section. Because I think that, are many of you going on to college algebra? Where are you guys going next? What's your next class? College algebra. Anybody else? Is it most college algebra here? Business, stats, business, algebra? Anybody not going to college algebra from here? Where are you going? Sharp, buddy. But is that everybody pretty much going to college algebra? Yes? Okay. So with that said, we do need to probably go through all the way to the end. Otherwise, you probably won't be prepared. Okay. This will be the last problem of the day. Okay. Let's take a look. So, we have 3 over 4 divided by 9 over 4 plus negative 2 over 3 times 1 over 3. Erase this stuff. Okay, this will be the last problem, and we'll finish the back half of this section on the next one. Okay. Let's treat these like 2 separate problems and then we'll tie it all together. Ready? Let's take a look at this one first. 3 over 4 times or divided by 9 over 4. When we saw a division problem before, we kept the first one the same, we changed it to multiplication, and we flipped the second one. Everybody with me? Yeah. Then we canceled. 4 and 4 would cancel to become 1 and 1. 3 and 9 are both divisible by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. We always rewrote the problem so that we could see, what each part became. Then we multiplied. 1 over 1 times 1 over 3 is 1/3. Now, I am going to take them out of parentheses here. I'm done with this, and I'll show you why in a moment. But there's your first fraction. If you're doing your problem at the same time, take a moment to go do the first half of your problem. Go ahead, okay? If you're doing your problem, because this is the last one, take your time to go through the first half of your problem. Anybody have questions on their first half? Please let me know. I'm happy to answer it for you. Okay. I'm going to go do the second half right now. Second half of the problem, right here. Other parentheses. Negative 2 over 3 times 1 over 3. I don't need to do keep, change, flip because it's not division. I can just look for any cancellation. No cancellation to do, so I can multiply. What does this become? Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2 over 3 times 3 is 9. There's a plus sign here. That's done. So pay attention. The second half of the problem is done. So I'm just gonna bring it all the way down up into this last step. What happens when we have a plus next to a minus and we have to remove parentheses? It becomes a minus 2/9. And I'm almost done. Everybody got the second half of the problem. Knock that out. Please let me know if you have questions. Now, I want to point something out. The first half of the problem actually took more steps to complete. The second half of the problem was done in one, so I just carried it down to the very end and then opened a parentheses and used my rule here. To finish the problem, we just need to treat it like a basic addition-subtraction problem. Common denominator. This 3 can become a 9. If I multiply it by 3, sure enough, it's going to be a 9. They're going to match, they're going to be common, but what I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. 3/9 is what it becomes, and now finish off the problem. 3 minus 2/9 is 1/9, and that's my answer. I hope you guys got your problem correct. Take a moment, see if it was correct for yours. Let me know if you have questions. We got a few more minutes left. If you want to ask it, I'm happy to answer it for you. We okay? So, there's the first half of that section. We'll finish the other half in another one.